We're live. It's taking a moment to find everything. But welcome, everybody. Let's see. Here we are. Are we on Twitch? We're on Twitch. Let's see. Here we are. Are we on? Okay. So hopefully this fight command has the right links for our Twitch friends. And for our YouTube friends, you'll have to be a little bit more clever and maneuver your way to the Chess Dojo Club on chess.com or to somehow or other finding the tournament. Let me log that I did my calculation work today in my plan for the week. And then... yeah, and then let's close that. T'es super haut là. Wow. Bravo, ça a marché. Wow. Wow. Ouais, c'est impressionnant tout ça. Pas facile. All right, so this tournament begins in 20 minutes. We do this every Friday night. You can set up a classical match with the opponent of your choosing and send me a link for me to comment your game, or you can join one of our arenas and get paired at random. Either 90 plus 30 time control or 45 plus 30 time control. Hi, Dr. P. Fowl. Good to see you. Yeah. And here we are. Let me make this a little less huge, this window. I don't have my, whatchamacall. I don't have my second monitor in this corner. And I've quickly gotten used to it. Again, I've only had it for like 3-4 days up there, but it's been amazing. Right on, Ethical Grandma. I would also love to fight, but I'm going to have to do the commentary tonight. That's the plan. So I hope you can find a good opponent and maybe we can play another evening. Next Friday I'll be playing in a tournament, so I will need someone else maybe to pop in and do some commentary. See if we can find somebody else who's down with that. Let's see how our tournaments are looking. For those on YouTube, if you navigate to the Chess Dojo Club on chess.com, there should be links like this for joining either section of the tournament. Wait, is my mic a little bit loud? Looks like my mic is a little bit loud, no? Let me know if it's a little bit too loud. I can turn it down just a tad. Okay, so let's click on one of these arenas and see what's cooking. Dr. P. Fowl is there. Nice. And Alex J. Gustafsson. And then if I go back and check the 1600 plus, got a couple people hanging out there as well. I don't know if you can hear me, Lazy Girl and Pizza Muncher, and who's in the under one? Dr. P. Fowl. But the three of you are, so to speak, in the wrong section by rating. Like Dr. P. Fowl, you are over 1600. In theory, you should be in the higher section. and the other 2 should be in the under 1600 section. It's not super critical that you join the correct section, but let me just put that out there that you might want to go into the right rating section. Also note there's a difference in time control. This under 1600 arena is going to be 45 plus 30. The over 1600 arena is going to be 90 plus 30. So it's going to be an even slower game. Hey Dripman, I saw you in that picture with Wemby playing. I clicked through your game as well. There's nothing to apologize for, Dr. P-Fowl. You are totally fine. I'm just giving the information in case it could help somebody. Yeah, I saw you. Of course, I clicked through the game. I played through your game. It looked like maybe you were a little overwhelmed by the moment at the beginning of the game. I guess it may have been a mind-blowing moment from start to end. I don't know. But at some point, your chess definitely settled in. From my perspective, as somebody who's seen you play before. You did it on purpose. Oh. I thought maybe you were freaking out or something. Okay, sorry. I can be wrong sometimes. I apologize. Anyway, it seemed awesome. That whole story. And of course, great to see you in a chess.com article like that. That was awesome for me. Yeah. BBC? Like the British news thing? Hey, Leviathan. How's it going today? Jeez, that's massive, the BBC. Wow. That's correct, Dr. P-Fowl. Lazy Girl 1903 is in theory in the wrong section. Pizza Muncher swapped with you. So the two of you are, so to speak, in the right section right now. And hopefully we'll pick up a few more players in the next 15 minutes. We need at least 4 players per section for the tournaments to start. So, yeah. By the way, for tonight's commentary, my partner scheduled some kind of a phone call for us from like 8 o'clock till 8:20 or so. So once the tournament successfully kicks off, I'm going to have to go take this call for 20 minutes. Then I'll come back at like 8:20, 8:25, and we'll get into some real commentary. Hopefully, I'll have something useful to say about the games. I usually do, you know, so that should be fun and interesting. That's part of the point of the show, to have some commentary. No sleep, ouch. Sounds less fun. By the way, for any Indian dojoers, we are going to have a new price in rupees on ChessDojo for the training program any day now. So hopefully it'll be easier to make a payment from India and also half as much. Which is, you know, fair-ish to anyone not in India. There's different costs of living in different countries and economies and prices and so forth. So we're doing an experiment first with India to see if it works, and then we can do it for some other countries. So, yeah. But we need to do sort of a, controlled experiment with one country for 2 or 3 weeks and see if it works. So that's what we're going to do. Cloud UCSD. Excellent. Welcome. This seems to be your first time here, so I hope you have a great time. While you play, I will try and do commentary on your game. And then later on when you're done, you can go back and watch the VOD if you want to compare what I was thinking about with what you were thinking about. Yeah, I think the current pricing is worth it if somebody has the money, right? But I think in some countries, it may be a lot of money. So, yeah. So we'll see. And announcement for anyone in the Louisville, Kentucky area. There is a new club within the training program. Within the training program, there are these clubs. You can hang out with people from the same area as you, for example. Track your progress together. There is now a Louisville, Kentucky club in the training program. Yeah, just based on pure cost of living, by the way, we could have perhaps selected a price around 33% instead of 50% for India. But there are costs associated with running the program. So, if we put the price too low for India just because of the cost of living there and then get flooded with users from India, it'll bump up our costs and it might not quite work out. So we're being a little careful at first with how it works. But yes, thank you for your trust. And as you can tell, we're not passionate about fleecing anybody. Oh, nice. That's really good to hear, Leviathan. So, yeah. If things go well and we don't run into any big problems, we can always later move it down from 50% to 40% or 35% or whatever. Easier to start at 50 and then nudge it down than to start at 30, encounter a bunch of problems, and then try and nudge it up. All right, we've got 4 players in the under 1600 section, so that's great. They are definitely going to have their arena. Let's see if we've got any high-rated fighters coming into the 1600 plus arena right now. Oh my goodness, we do. Got a couple masters joining that section. This is the chess map, Zally Tales. I don't know too much about Fortnite. This is a chessboard. 9 minutes till games start. So we can still chit chat a little bit as folks come in. Things to be aware of for anybody who's newer. It seems we've got a few new people all the time. During the game, it's best to monotask the best you can, meaning not to do other things while you're playing your game, not to be on your phone or talking in chat or watching the stream, especially not watching the stream, right? Because if I'm like observing a game between Shock Steal and Chin to Win, and I say, G3, oh, he's opened up the rook, and then Bishop B7, oh, she's attacking the rook, it's not fair for the players to hear what I think about the game while they're playing, right? Oof, no promotion allowed. I mean, I can understand if they didn't want us to do any promotions, but you should be allowed to tell other people in your chess club what you're using and what you like. That's harsh. Hmm. Too bad. Too bad. I mean, I appreciate that you tried to do that, honestly. Like, that's really, really kind of you. I mean, I guess not just to us, it should be good for everybody in your club, right? Yeah, it should be useful to them. It should be great. Well, maybe one day your club president will try the dojo, like it, and say, oh man, I should have shared this with my club sooner. So the most important thing for anybody new to this is not to listen to the stream while you play. All the videos here are recorded as videos on demand that you can go back later and watch. So if you play a game, I would love to talk about your game while you play, live, in the heat of the moment, with the clock running along with you, etc., right? And then, but you should not listen to that. You should just play your game, and then later you can go back and compare your thoughts with my thoughts. That's kind of one of the big ideas of these fights. Oh yeah, I didn't announce it on Twitter. It's a little bit late to announce it. Right, Alex, you can see in sync with it the chat replay as well, right? And see what other players were thinking as well as me as you watch it, right? Yeah. And sort of compare all kinds of different reactions of players of different levels and styles and so forth. Okay, I've tweeted it. I did my marketing for the day. 3-4 minutes till go time, I guess. We got 7 players now up here in the 1600 plus arena. Beautiful, beautiful. And under 1600, let's make sure they're still got more than 4 players. Yes, they're up to 6 players, so they're good too. Excellent. Excellent. Amy Michelle, this is classical chess, so it's a pretty long time control. If you, Amy Michelle, are the same as Michelle Amy, then you are currently in the under 1600, which is played at a rate of 45 plus 30. There's also a 1600 plus section that's played at a rate of 90 plus 30. You're pretty close to 1600, so you can play in whichever section you prefer based on time control. But just know right now you're looking at 45 minutes with 30 seconds added per move. The other section, you'd have 90 minutes and then the same 30 seconds per move. So you'd have, all that time. Yeah. Things will kick off here in like 3 minutes. Why are the time controls different, Dr. P-Fowl? Well, basically, somebody who is all the way at the beginner range of the spectrum, right? Like, 100 or 200 rated, doesn't have as many things to think about during their game, so they'll play like faster. And somebody who's like a grandmaster has a million things to think about, so they might like to have hours and hours. If we had more sections, we would split the time controls up even more. But in the Dojo training program, we've split it into like 4 different time controls, like under 800, 800 to 1200, 1200 to 1600, something like that, right? 4 or 5 time controls. And so here, because of the number of people we have in chess.com closing tournaments, if you don't have more than 4 people, for now I'm splitting it into, you are, so to speak, in the wrong one, but it's not a problem, Amy. You can play whichever one you feel happier or more comfortable in. But if you want to play some higher rated players, if you want to play 90 plus 30, you'd want to switch to the other group. So anyway, Dr. P-Fowl, yeah, we've got a slower time control for the higher rated group and a faster time control for the lower rated group. And eventually, if we had attendance of 50, 60 people who were here at 8 p.m. right when it starts, I would split it into even more sections to give the most appropriate time controls. Like if there were some 200 or 300 rated players in this section, 45 plus 30 might seem like a bit of an eternity for them, right? All right. And I guess you mean your first OTB, your first real life over the board tournament in June. That's great. That should be fun, and we will do everything we can to help you feel ready for that. Real rating with people and clocks, yeah. With the click, click, click of the clocks. Okay, Dabo 5000. Another master level player joining us. Says, I don't calculate. I don't know what that is. I'll play one, I guess. Beware of the one who supposedly can't calculate. All right, and with less than a minute to go, we've got a few more people popping into the tournaments. So it looks like everybody's going to get some games tonight, which is wonderful. If you happen to be the odd person, so to speak, in your section, just wait for someone else to join. It's just rolling arena, so whenever somebody else joins, you'll get paired up pretty soon. Yeah, see you after the game, Dr. P-Fowl. Have a great game. Enjoy, everybody. Enjoy your games, and come check in with us when your games are done. All right, I see 10 seconds. Buckle your seatbelts. Make sure you're connected to the chess.com server. Sometimes it forfeits people on move 1 if they aren't right there and they don't play e4 or d4 on the first move, or knight h3 or a4 or whatever. But yeah, hope you're all there and ready to go. I could imagine Michelle, Amy, and Dr. P-Fowl actually getting paired with each other potentially. Let's click on Dr. P-Fowl and see. No, Dr. P-Fowl got paired with Moose Talker. Oh, Moose Talker popped in at the last moment. And we've got Boondock Striker against Pizza Muncher. You're going to try and write the moves on a piece of paper. It looks like you popped out of the tournament just as it was starting, by the way. Perhaps on purpose, but, just so you know. 4 a.m., ouch. Okay, I've opened up a ton of games here. And now I'm going to go to the under 1600 and open up some of their games as well. And Michelle, Amy, you've moved to the under 1600 arena. I now see you there. Okay. And you are playing Alex J. Gustafsson. Super. All right. So make sure to mute me so you don't hear anything I say about your game because I'm super insulting. No, because because I don't want to, cheat or mess with anybody's games. Yes, Amy, you can actually switch after your game if you want to play a second game. You may be tired after one. Not many people play more than one game in these events. It's usually like play one game and then, come back and fight next Friday. Though we have a couple people who do get in two or three games sometimes. But yes, Amy, I hope you feel free to move around the cabin as you see fit and don't feel any pressure of any kind from us here. So Queen B6, B-Town is going to try to challenge this bishop a little bit and prepare to recapture on C6 without doubling pawns if white trades the knight. When this bishop comes out here, as white just played, that's kind of a move that's usually played to trade the knight. So very often you'll see black play bishop to d7 with the idea of being able to recapture with a piece and not double the pawns. And queen b6 has a similar idea to be able to recapture with the queen. And meanwhile, this queen can also put a little pressure on the bishop where you have to make sure you're keeping it defended. And she can sometimes have tactics when white castles kingside. So this move is just slightly out of the ordinary, but it's fully reasonable. Therefore, the Leviathan, aka Gaurav, is having a little think here as white. Had black played one of the most common moves, which are probably g6 and bishop d7, we might have seen Gaurav castle really quickly, because Gaurav might have still been familiar with the setup, might have just castled very quickly. But here we see Leviathan, as soon as he faces a move that he's not super familiar with, he's going to stop and assess what are the pluses and minuses of this move. And sorry, I'm distracted by my house. And then assess, how best to deal with the situation that's come up. Okay, so as I previewed before, I'm going to go do this little phone call, and then I'll be back to continue the commentary in about 20 minutes. Open to all. You can still join. Commentary resumes around 8:30. Let's say, given that I'm about 6 minutes late for this call. All right, so I'll leave this running with a game for you all to watch, and I will be back. Okay. They didn't pick up, so we're going to continue with the commentary a little bit. So we got Queen B6 after a nice 5-minute think. Perfect time usage by Leviathan, in my opinion. 5 minutes. Perfect. The first move out of the opening with this kind of a time control. Decides to give the trade. Queen takes. Sets up the light squared pawn chain. This is a strategic theme of this opening, right? The bishop came out from f1. And then the pawn chain gets formed behind it. When the bishop gets traded, you're in danger as white of being weak on the color squares where you don't have the bishop. These pawns act as kind of your shield for the light squares. Now black goes and develops the bishop to the best square for it, probably. Most people like to put it on this square in closed Sicilians. A few people like to do it in open Sicilians too, but much more popular in closed Sicilians. And Gaurov starts a classic maneuver to transfer the queen over to the king side. That's where Gaurov has... Sorry, I'm going to say Leviathan so it's clearer for those who don't know that Leviathan is Gaurov. That's where white has space from this head-pawn duo. So white is strong on the king side, and it looks like white is going to use the classic plan of building strength. So you pick an area where you're already somewhat strong, and then you mass more stuff in that area to try and make yourself stronger and stronger there. So typically black will castle and white will go queen h4 and then look to attack the black king with some kind of a storm. These pawn storms are extremely potent. So many players will think and hesitate before castling and say, well, is there another option? Do I delay it? Or do I completely castle queenside? Do I leave my king in the center? Delaying it could mean I start a queenside attack, b5, rook b8, etc. And as long as I'm not castled, white won't really know how to start a kingside attack. And if white starts to open up the center, then evacuate to the kingside. So there's a policy of just delaying it, but still planning to castle at the right moment. You can also just castle right away, or you could go bishop g4 or bishop d7 or something and castle queenside. Yeah, some options, and it's nice to see B-Town stop and have a think as well at this point. I think it's a well-chosen moment for them as well. And hopefully it's not just, blind fear of castling kingside. Hopefully it's also some, thinking about, well, what are we going to do, right? Where do I want this bishop? Where do I want this king? Right? What is my plan? Am I going to build strength on the queen side? Am I going to open up the center? Am I going to try and trade some pieces? Do I have a maneuver in mind? Yeah, so logical, good start to this game. Let's click over on this other game that we were watching before. Alex J. Gustafsson flexing the easy system against the French, as suggested by Jesse, this Milner-Berry attack. So it's an advanced French pawn structure as white. And then when black takes the pawn on d4 or threatens the pawn on d4, white simply doesn't defend it. White doesn't even recapture. And, white manages to overprotect the e-pawn even without the d-pawn. We lose a pawn and we get development time for it. Now, if this pawn can be attacked by black and pressured, that's a real danger for white because it does not have the defense of the d-pawn. Otherwise, black's extra pawn is an asset eventually, but at the moment, the space advantage is going to be problematic for black's king and several of their minor pieces. So that's the idea here from white. Michelle Amy is thinking about it. We see this opening with moderate frequency here in the dojo tournaments. I think because it's in Jesse's aggressive repertoire and it's become pretty popular. I think also it's a quite decent line, so even people outside of the dojo have started playing this variation to some extent. All right, Stamen tells us, at my place of employment, we have a brand new chessboard in the lunchroom. I opened it, made a first move, and added a sign saying black's move, white's move. Anyone can make a move. And for months, people have been trading off turns, playing moves in the lunchroom. That's super fun. All right, and Viral Stigma is saying that they came up with this Queen C7 line recently, meaning you invented it for yourself, Viral Stigma, right? You may know that it's been invented in the past by other people as well, including me and other people before me. But yeah, this move does not pressure d4, but it pressures e5. So it looks to play f6. It also more or less prevents white from putting the bishop on its best square because of cd4, cd4, knight b4. That's kind of like a little trap in this queen c7 move order. If the bishop moved away, there'd be knight c2 check. Right? So white has to give up the bishop here. Only 25 master games, huh? Was one of them mine? Viral Stigma? I think I've got a game in the database where I played this line. Okay, so Viral says, there's a fun line with a3 here, f6, bishop f4, and then queen f7 with the idea of g5. Can't you also play g5 without queen f7? To me, the main line in this, one of the main lines in this position that I've played before, Viral, goes here. And if pawn takes f6, there's queen f4. If white plays an indifferent move, there's knight g6, bishop g3, knight f5, pawn takes, knight takes. White can win a pawn here. This has been a key line in my practice, and I think black does very well with it. I like the dark squared bishop versus the extra pawn. So I've seen that. I've had that in my practice. Bishop e2 is, I think, the most common move here after queen c7. I've faced bishop e2 and a3. Anyway, easy system here. a6 is a reasonably popular choice for black in these positions. It allows the queen to drop back to c7 and threaten this pawn without knight to b5 coming in. So this is a pretty reasonable move, even though it's not a developing move. It's very logical here. Get rid of that commentary resumes comment, since it doesn't seem like the phone call is happening, actually. Gustafsson thinking about this. Despite the fact that white has sacked a pawn, there's not a very direct, immediate attacking idea for white. It's more about coordinating the pieces, keeping e5 safe, slowly improving the position. If the black king goes here, maybe building attack. If the king stays in the center, maybe slowly preparing a central attack. But it's not super fast for white. It is also, you're always paying attention to little opportunities. Knight g5. Okay, Gustafsson goes very, very aggressive, looking at like queen h5 next. This is not the normal pace of this line in my experience. Of course, everybody can interpret this in their own way because it's a pretty fresh position. And there are gambits in the queen pawn openings like this, like Slav gambits and stuff, where you get a pawn to e5 and then you play knight g5 to try and start something on exactly those squares. You know, there's ideas like against h6, playing queen h5. Right? And the pawn can't take the knight. You pressure this. And if here, then maybe you go for it, so to speak, right? Something like that. You can also try something really aggressive like this. Queen check. Right? King goes here. You go for bishop e3 to c5. You can go for bishop g5 check, winning back some of your material, and keep playing with this king placed here. But I definitely see some plausible themes for white with knight g5. If I didn't know better, this would definitely look like a strong move to me. But I think I know that that no move like this works in this position. I don't know exactly the theory, but I'm pretty sure that there's no like just go get him right away kind of move here that works for white. So I would guess that h4, just taking space on this side of the board, would be a major move. And then I think also, you know, bishop e3 or knight a4 are probably reasonable moves with the idea of rook c1 and going after the c5 square. Those are my thoughts as to what, my guess as to what you're allowed to do here. But let's see. Michelle's already played a move, so let's see how she's dealing with this knight g5. Counterattacks on f2. Okay, so here I was thinking maybe queen f3 when I saw this move. Knight g5. I thought if black counterattacks with bishop c5, maybe queen f3 would cover f2 and attack at the same time this point on f7. Keep white's initiative going. Okay, let's give a shout out to PLE Tactico. Thank you for the raid. And welcome, Raiders. You are now watching Friday Night Fights, a weekly dojo tradition where people fight with each other. Classical chess, long games. Sometimes it's the end of a long week and people still come and get punched in the face by their opponent's knights and bishops. I'm David. I'm one of 3 teachers running the Chess Dojo. And lately it's often me who runs this show, but not necessarily. Could be somebody else some other day. Historically, it was Jesse and Kostya who started Friday Night Fights, not me. Well, anytime you see bishop c5, you also have to wonder about knight a4, attacking the queen and bishop and sacking bishop f2, and that's always so complicated. I understand if somebody's tired, it just seems painfully complicated and they don't want to have anything to do with it. But if you've got a little bit of mental energy to do some calculation, then that's a typical sequence to calculate anytime bishop c5 happens. To go knight a4, attacking the queen, check, attacking the king, King moves, keeping the bishop attacked. Usually they're going to have to save their queen versus taking anything. Then you just start looking at some moves here. If you can visualize this position from here, then you visualize it and just ask yourself, where can the queen go? Can she keep this defended? Can she counterattack something else of white's, right? Because if she's forced to do something like this, you win a piece. That's the premise. So we're looking at queen d4, queen a7, and the queen's looking for things to counterattack. Like if the knight weren't defended, you could play queen a5, and then when white takes this bishop, you take the knight. But here, everything white has looks pretty defended. Excuse me. So I think the main move would be probably queen a7. Now you could also try queen f3 with the bishop attacked and f7 attacked. It takes your rook. You take here. The king runs. Looks like not quite enough. On the other hand, also it's still interesting. Not clearly losing either, just super complicated. Stayman was thinking that queen f3 immediately would be the response here before knight a4, and I think that's the most plausible, as well as being a little less insanely complicated to fathom this move. You defend f2, and you simply attack f7 at the same time. It may not be easy for black to deal with it. And as Stayman says, if black plays a move strictly defending f7, now that this is defended, we can maybe go knight a4 and pluck this bishop. And white has actually quite a few options in this position, as well as knight a4. There's taking on h7, if you just want to get your pawn back, right? Nothing wrong with getting a pawn. Well, I mean, if it's truly free, I mean, you know, it's good to capture something. And then there's this pawn here, which looks defended, but we can try to unleash the power and coordination of our pieces with knight d5. Pawn d5, e6. And gosh, I'm so sorry to hear you mouse slip. Yeah. That's really tragic in a classical game where you put more effort and time into the game, and then to have it spoiled is even more painful. So this kind of an idea here, it's a piece sacrifice, and some of you may have divined that it has as a theme that we're messing with black's king. That said, white has sacked a piece and black has bishop f2. Excuse me. As an escape hatch in some cases to stop white's attack with the queen trade, you know, like this. In this case, it looks like white remains a bit better into the endgame. But it's there, and it's going to reduce white's attacking potential. So those are some options. Knight a4, knight d5, knight h7. None of them are 100% clear, but it does seem like queen f3 is the right direction, and it's the direction that Gustafsson has taken after reflection. Greetings, Jim C. And rather quickly, Michelle covers f7, which was the clearest defensive move here for sure. I could sack two pieces instead of one. Go super crazy. But then I think bishop f2 should refute me, right? No, because that sacks one piece and I'll get a second one here. That's right, Joe. The arena started half an hour ago. You can join anytime you like. Who's better here? Well, white's better here. Bishop pair versus knight pair. Huh. Wild. What do you think of that? Double knight sack? Maybe castles would refute it. So maybe white has to sack in the other order. Here, here, and then here. Bishop f2. If takes, there's still e6, which is fine for white. So maybe castles. Oh, knight b6, still fine for white. Huh. Aching off. I think white should sack on f7 before d5, so this is the wrong move order, but I think this is the position you're asking about, right? Could black just take at that point? And after rook check, go king d7. Bishop f5 is a good idea, but I think queen f7 is a pure refutation, probably. But if all white had were bishop f5, I would encourage you to have the instinct that this is probably good for white. This king looks in truly poor shape to me. You know, something like this. We take. Black can take on f2, but don't get that confused with a counterattack in this case. It's just a pawn. The king steps out of the way. This king's being threatened by rook discoveries, you know, somewhere or other. So maybe leave the bishop defending the knight, play a move like this. White brings this piece here. And to me, this just feels like black's dying. Too much pressure, nowhere safe for the king, too many pins and all that. I guess my instinct tells me there's some survival chance, whereas after queen f7, no. But the vague instinct is it feels like white's got enough juice. So take that or leave that. I mean, we're just all gradually calibrating and recalibrating all our instincts, right? Getting them a little more accurate. And then, of course, in an actual game, you take your instinct and you calculate based on the instinct, right? You either say, this feels right, I'm going to really work on it, or this might be right, let me calculate a little bit and see if it is or isn't. And your instincts are also telling you when to give up and move on to another idea. So depending how much time you have, my instinct as black would often tell me like, this looks pretty darn scary. I'm going to spend my time on something less scary. Okay, so this is the position before Monsieur Alex J. Very critical moment. One thing Jesse told me is that a lot of the opening variations he's selected in the aggressive repertoire have important moments that come up very early in the game, meaning you need to spend 10 or even 20 minutes pondering some fairly early decisions where normally you would just be playing moves like, you know, bishop d2, rook c1, finishing my development, right? Instead, here you are calculating a double knight sack on move 11, right? So it's an extra burden for you and your opponent when you play some of these lines. That other game we were watching was also within a similar line. I think it was Leviathan and B-Town here, right? And they're also only at move 11 because, you know, big decisions get made early, right? In the position we saw, black considered for 4 minutes before choosing to castle. White played f5 before queen h4. That was probably what white spent a lot of time on. I feel like Leviathan using a little too much time. They should be a little more confident and comfortable with this position. It's very similar to other positions in this line. But sometimes the better you know something, the more you have to think about, you know. And so Now you're thinking about much more subtle and interesting options than before. This move here is a pawn sack. The idea is that when black takes, you don't even take back. You just keep bringing pieces to the side of the board. If black takes, then you recapture at that point. So hi, Day. Hi, Oinist. And yeah, so b5 was the choice. Black sets up their strength over on the queen side. And now Gower brings the queen, and black has now accepted the gambit. Woo! Exciting. I'm not totally sure that B-Town's moves fit together the tightest here, because you're playing b5 but then accepting the gambit. I feel like if you're accepting the gambit, maybe you want to focus on moves fighting around f5, whereas if you play b5, you're kind of not opening up your king. You're saying you don't need that pawn, and you're looking for queenside play. To me, to try and get the queenside play and take the pawn feels potentially like the moves might not go together the best. Now, what will white do next in this position? I would guess bishop h6, developing one piece, paving the way for a second piece, and removing a defender. It's not the only option, but that's my first guess, and it looks pretty reasonable. There's a famous attacking pattern as well where you leave the bishops here and you don't trade, and then you go knight g5. The h-pawn can't move because you've got the bishop on h6, and then at some point you play either knight d5 or rook f6 to get rid of that knight and go after queen h7 checkmate. And Aching Golf is suggesting something like that even without bishop h6, right? Like knight g5 first, going after this, and then you've got the idea, if black takes on e4, boom, removing the defender for checkmate. A typical combination that one should learn, I would say, within the 1,000 to 1,400 range. Players should know this remove the defender theme for h7 checkmates, rook takes f6. But even if black doesn't take on e4, then as Aching Golf said, this knight could come to d5, like bishop here, knight d5. If the knight takes, you're checkmating, and if the knight doesn't take, you're going to take the knight. So one of the typical ways black defends against knight g5 is rook e8 or rook d8, clearing flight squares for the king this way. But another option here is h6, attacking the knight and keeping it from attacking h7. And this is often a pretty annoying defensive resource to such an extent that that's where my bishop h6, I shouldn't even say my bishop h6 move, because this is sort of a known move or idea. This comes largely out of the idea of immobilizing the h-pawn to set up the knight g5 attack. It's one move slower than immediately going for knight g5, but think how many more resources you have this way, right? Number one, you've got the bishop there instead of on c1, so you're removing a defender, you're attacking better with an extra piece. Number two, this piece could get into the game if the opportunity arises, say rook takes f6 or rook f3. With the bishop on c1, it would just be stuck. And then three is that this pawn can't move to h6 or h7, you've immobilized it. So three considerable advantages to getting the bishop here before knight g5, and that's why it's kind of, as a pattern, the first move that comes to my mind when black takes this pawn sack. That was relatively quick, Dr. P-Fowl. I hope your game was interesting. Leviathan goes for bishop h6 as well. Now, there could also be a secondary threat here of going queen g5 instead of knight g5. But let's bear in mind there is knight e8, so it's not... Queen g5 isn't you're dead, it's checkmate kind of move. But potentially it is that after this, You could take on e7, or you could take on f5 and now your queen's defending it, or you could go knight d5 and bring your knight to e7 very quickly and powerfully. So, and you can see this knight e7 is looking pretty unpleasant for black. So I think here you can kind of feel like, oh, queen g5 might be a little bit of a threat, actually. Like, black might want to play a move that takes into account both queen g5 and knight g5 as ideas for white next, right? For example, b4. b4 looks kind of bad, right? Because we go queen g5, knight e8, knight d5. And black looks bad, right? Yeah, we're on? Okay. All right, folks, I'm going to take a little break from the commentary, leave this thrilling position rolling for you, and I will be back after this phone call.
It's been a long day and a long week. Something about the first week back in January. Sure, absolutely. I just felt like it was like everyone.
Bonsoir, Elise. I will be back in about 20 minutes from this phone call. Sorry to leave you as you arrive. But maybe you can comment for folks in chat on what's going on in this game as we get the bishop trade on h6. All right, see y'all soon. Okay, how's it going? Oh, it's tactical. The battle is in full swing here. As expected. As expected.
Yep, exactly. And so the first 20 questions were fine because they were easy and she could answer them perfectly. And then that was the first hour. And then the second hour she did 2 questions. Then the school was like, do you really want to keep doing this? And we decided that, because apparently she was incredibly disruptive to everyone.
I don't know, DJ the Berkucci. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that situation. This game is super wild, right? As expected. So black played this trade here. To boot the queen immediately.
She decided she wanted to try.
White came here. Could have given this check if you wanted a tempo, right? But then you're going to get tempoed by rook to g8. And now we're looking at stuff like h3, rook g8, take the pawn, knight e3 counterattacking, right? Check here, rook f2. Very intense. Hard to say, again, who's doing what here. Viral Stigma thinks maybe White had a chance to have the advantage with the queen g5 move. Yeah, certainly plausible. So White played queen h4. Black traded knight g5 on the attack, h6. And that's basically how we get here, huh? h3, c4. Black's plan is if you take the knight to check here and bring the queen over to defend the whole area and keep the h-pawn and the king alive. Look at that resourcefulness from B-Town. Yeah. Okay, so White's going to need something clever, since Black's being clever. My first thought would be to bring this knight towards the Black king, just as Aching Ulf is saying. It also deals with this immediate queen c5 idea by covering that. Another option, Viral Stigma says d4, taking away that square from the queen and leaving the knight covering different squares than the pawn. But potentially your knight won't get to the king side then. Right? Wait, what would happen if we retreated this knight that's attacked by the pawn? Then this knight is attacked by our pawn. And if it moves away, we have at least queen takes h6. There's no rule that our knight has to stay on g5 just because we've got that aggressive attacking feeling, right? You're feeling it. You're like, I'm going to give them this tactic, and I'm going to give them that tactic, and I'm going to leave my pieces hanging and just keep threatening stuff. But there's no hard and fast rule that you're not allowed to retreat. I generally, if you look at my games, it looks like I am following an unspoken rule that I can't retreat. But in fact, you can retreat, and either knight e4 looks pretty good. Knight c4, d5, pawn takes. At first looks good to me. Oh no, the queen's covering here. After pawn takes knight, I wanted to do this. Absolute no-no. Uh-oh, d5 is very clever, Aching Ulf, because the queen comes and covers this area. Oh, what a mess. So this might be similar. Black might do d5. Pawn takes, knight takes. Takes. Maybe queen e7 is winning. Black might have to be really careful. Losing one more dark square might be the end of the story. So I don't know if black can play pawn takes pawn, but this position here looks pretty intense. Another option would be you play, f6 to shield dark squares, then queen h6. I'm not sure what the right move would be for black here, which is not a great sign. G5 to open up the king is coming. Yeah, maybe this is borderline winning for white now that I think about it a little bit more. Material's completely equal, but it's hard to cover these squares. I feel like the black pieces are just not on the level of the white pieces, are they? Just pound for pound, piece for piece. And Yeya is saying something similar, or maybe I should say Yay. Saying, yeah, it looks like white's doing really well, actually. Archix asks if knight f6 works. Maybe. Is black's move? Is rook f6 a threat as well? Probably not, but you guys got that aggressive feeling. Good on you. Actually, maybe rook f6 would work. Let me play random move. Boom. Again, I think like queen e7 is going to be more obvious than rook f6. It's going to be easier, right? To just take that pawn with your queen instead of sacking a rook for it. But okay, let's do this for argument's sake. Takes, and then this is your follow-up. This move first, trapping the king, and then next you want to go knight f6. Yeah. There's no stopping knight f6, so yeah, black's in the game. White's in the game. Black could either sack the queen here for the knight or over here. Maybe like rook here, 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 here. Maybe the other rook better. Rook f6 just to make Fischer proud. Yeah, no, rook f6 is stylish. And it seems to win. But I bet queen e7 is actually easier for you. Have we ever been in the same place at the same time, Elise? That's an open question, yeah? Okay, so knight g4 looks pretty good. This is like the best move for black, probably against a d5, or best we've thought of so far. You know, just retreating is terrible. White can do this, right? Or whatever. Knight e3. Queen g3 wins the knight anyway. I think somebody asked about f5 maybe instead. It's weird that we chose to play games against each other online in front of other people. If we were just two different accounts of our own, that would be very schizophrenic of us. Or just bizarre. Bizarre degree of effort. White's down to 5 minutes here, which is brutal for such a wild position. White did play knight g takes e4. I think here's where somebody was asking me about maybe f5. My first thought is this should work out very nicely for white here, 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 because our rook can come out and there's can't, right? And then we can continue with, you know, check and here and I don't know, maybe takes here. But it's not 100% clear. Maybe it's better to take like this so the king can't get away from this area here where there's no coverage, right? Good afternoon, Far Eastern. All-nighter. Woo! Now you're bringing me back. Now you're bringing me back. So queen e7, yeah, you know, there's this goes here, and then the knight comes here. Looks very tough for black again, I think, just because the king is so weak. But, you know, I guess you're not really threatening knight f6 because if rook takes f6 and then checkmate, right? So it's, I mean, it's not like white's king has a perfect castled position here either. I suppose the threat is something like rook f6, rook af1, rook g6. Okay, so let's see what's happening in the game. Knight g4 was played. d5 was played. Knight retreated. Now that definitely lets black come back here, right? Queen check, king here. I think this was unnecessarily complicated. Here you could definitely have taken this with an advantage for white. But what's going to happen here? Let's dwell on the game because, you know, white's got under 6 minutes and the game's going to progress. This is to prevent queen f6. Here we'd have knight d5 winning, I think. So maybe here defending the pawn. Queen h6, preparing knight h5. Looks like a pretty strong attack. Oh, thanks, P-Foul. Let me fix that. Doesn't feel like this king should be defensible here, does it? Like, vaguely, it doesn't feel like there should be a defense. Lack of pawn cover in these pieces coming should be enough. The move f6 allows you to bring a defensive piece with rook f7, which is what Elise is pointing out. But white can check first before the king can move, send the king here, and then lift. And that looks truly dead. You could also go knight h5. Now that rook f7, you can take it. And rook g8, you have this probably. It's hard to imagine a defense here, but we've got a suggestion of a5, bringing a faraway piece to become a defender. Okay, white's going to have to go for this checkmate relatively quickly. I only see queen d4 at first, but let's see what other options are there. We've got some moves. King h1, knight e3, rook lifts. So again, against this move here, you could try to sack an exchange, right, just to bring the next rook. The problem is queen h6, queen h6, right? So rook f3 is very logical, attacking that knight, but the knight can be defended. I mean, I kind of want to take out this pawn maybe, but okay, rook f3. d4, defending it. All right. So now this knight has to go somewhere. Or you could take with the idea of this. But, I mean, the king's not wrecked yet. Right? This is covered. Go like here, check, here. And this pawn is still something white has to respect / deal with. I have no idea what's going on. Truly no idea. I imagine that Leviathan's going to move this knight to e4 here. But this knight's amazing. Cutting off stuff. Bishop b7 could come. f5 could come, just creating more space to shelter the king. It feels like white's gone from winning to losing somewhere in this sequence, and I don't know exactly when or why. Yeah, the a5 line was losing that we were looking at before. Was it like this line? Which line was it? It was queen c5, queen h6, a5, knight h5 mating. Right. The game moved on, so I didn't go into this, but queen d4 is the only move that covers the checkmate, and then white has a flashy winning move, rook f6, that everybody's excited about, right? White also has a very, very simple, not flashy move, or less flashy move. You could still call it slightly flashy. Knight d5 is going to win more than the rook f6 move you guys like. Why? Because you're bringing more to the party, right? These pieces are all attacking. This one isn't. You know, probably rook f3, rook g3 is winning, as well as rook f6. But if you bring the last piece, I mean, that's the collapse. So, rook h4. Yeah, rook f4 maybe. Rook f4 and rook f3 probably both winning right here. Yeah, everything good. In this line here is this mate. Seems to be, yeah. Knight d5 similarly will be instantly mate here, right? It's just knight e7 mate next move. They're all mate. The flashy move works, so why not? Yeah, sure, go for it if you like it. we should all have our own aesthetics, right? So if you're in the mood for rook f6, do it. I like to bring my last piece to the game. That's what brings me pleasure. It's just a different kind of thing, you know? Let's check in on what's happening to Galraf. So king here, knight e3 was clearly better than knight f2. Now here, white probably needed to take on e7. It's just a guess, though, because that's my instinct. And if white's going from winning to losing, maybe it's because they didn't play my instinctive move. You take out the dark square, right? And now... Oops, not that one. Now the dark squares are super weak, right? So whatever black does, we're going knight h5 or knight e4 or knight d5, and this square's too weak. We're threatening rook f6. Taking the rook doesn't help at all. Well, it wins material, but I doubt it helps. Have to hope for a queen trade to save the Situatsk. It's not like totally knockout, right? It's a real fight here. White's down in exchange long term, and the king is weak long term. So it's hard to say. Black's got some work to do to coordinate still. It's not super clear. Not super clear. So knight e3 was probably a very strong move from B-Town. Queen coming over. Looks to me like white's got another moment where they can take this pawn. May or may not be your last chance of the game, Leviathan. I was sort of afraid that black might go f5 here and just start kicking the heck out of all our pieces, right? Anchored by the knight, now the rook's in the game. Too much space, right? Black gets too much space. We get, like, chased off the board. So I think queen e7 is again going to be the big chance for white here. What did Galraf do? Galraf took the pawn. All right. We still have the game. I mean, I would bet on the 24 minutes versus the 3 minutes. If the position is kind of a toss-up, plus a super complicated one, at this point you just have to think that the time advantage is going to be parlayed into some better moves at some point here. The game itself is a mess, and white's in it because they've got the f6 square. I think it's absolutely... Well, maybe not. I haven't looked at it long enough, but my first thought is you've got to play f5 to keep white out of the f6 square. Note that white can't move this knight because of checkmate. So there's no knight f5, no knight h5, no knight e2. What's going on? I mean, at a certain level, nobody knows because the game's super complicated. At another level, what's going on is Friday night fights. You know, black and white going at it. Bishop h3? Why would you do that? Doesn't that lose the bishop? I just don't even understand why you would want to go bishop h3. I'm not even going to get fancy and play knight f6 first, which is probably good. But if I just take it, I don't understand the concept from black. Yeah, you're not the only one, Dabo. I think Andy was calling for it as well. F5 played. Great move. Great move from B-Town.
His daughter Eddie.
Oh, I understand. I can demonstrate with that. It's like I have two non-readers, and I'm a reading specialist who's read like half the books in the library at King. So
Terrible.
I won't take any books from me. No, thank you.
That's so upsetting. I feel lucky that our middle child is a huge reader. But he won't let me read to him or read with him anymore. He like started at age 2 and basically by age 3 was like, no thanks, I'm not interested in reading with you, and I'm so sad about it. So that's okay. I've got one more. He's not interested in reading.
Black doesn't appear to be threatening FE4 because of F8.
We'll get in our groove and have a couple years of like really cozy.
But Black's maybe got bishop B7 prepared. And then it'd be too late to move your knight or your rook because of G2. So it could go like bishop B7, queen B7, FE4 at some point, right? To me,
And just find out everything you need, because then you're going to be able to advocate for her. I mean, essentially, people come in with their private assessments, and of course, as you know,
to me,
about accessing
White might want to play rook G1
everything because you have
or exchange sack
through the school district to get.
in this current position. Maybe knight D6 is playable too. Yeah, he goes for knight D6. Okay.
Which one is the one that you're
Now, F4 is a big question.
that's a school? Summit Institute. Is that
Yes, and Summit is a big.
I hadn't even thought of F4 before, but that's like a big argument for my instinct move, rook G1. Rook G1, the idea is to be able to move this knight again. And, well, here comes to the 4.
My neighbor in the library, my office is in the library, was a neuropsych. She's left, and she did private assessments, and I've wanted to have
Okay, knight D6. Let's see what B-Town can cook up with those 20 minutes that they've got.
great kids, and she ended up leaving because they cut her position. But it was kind of rare.
Viral Stigma had some kind of crazy line I couldn't 100% follow, but it was something like knight C5, takes. I don't think bishop E6 could be played because if knight takes bishop or queen takes bishop. But it was something and then knight D7.
so? I was trying to we did get some version of it in France.
Going D takes C, B takes C from black, which they may or may not play. Knight C5,
It was about an hour long.
and then
It was helpful in that
bishop E, DC, BC, bishop E6, knight C5, bishop C4, knight D7. I can't follow the line. All right, black played bishop E6. No F4. F4 looked pretty critical for white. I'm not sure what white was going to do about that. But black defaults for developing the last piece, which makes a ton of sense. Unless F4 was a knockout, and then it might be a missed opportunity.
more than 99% out for all domains, but we were hoping we would find relative weaknesses, and she was strong in everything. Because perfectionists probably try to answer everything perfectly, but I hope. Okay, I'm gonna talk.
Oh, right, F4 wouldn't yet threaten to take the knight. Good point, Elise.
Wasn't worth it.
Just like the pawn wasn't really threatening this knight. Against F4, I suppose white could have played rook here and then bring the knight to E4. And that wouldn't be good. Oh, yeah. So black was right not to play F4 and just develop here. Okay. Good job, B-Town. Oh, and Leviathan defends G2 and keeps 2 minutes on the clock. Great. Great. Great from Leviathan. The game goes on. It's a heck of a fest here. I would maybe go for the endgame as black with queen G7. Oh, there's so many options. Maybe rook D8. Bothering the knight. Knight takes C2 even, just trying to grab the pawn. Oh, there's so many possibilities. Bishop D5, suggested by Stigma.
It's first of all really hard. I feel like it's hard to get an IEP in Berkeley. I feel like you have to kind of do a lot to get one.
Oh yeah, Bishop D5's been played. Now what do we do?
Kids coming up to middle school, and they've had one in elementary, and then they exit them, and they usually give them one for speech
Oh, white can move the knight on g3. That's the insane answer. How do like look how crazy this is. Plausible knight e2. You can't take because of this, right? But knight e2, threatening knight f4. Knight takes g2. What? We didn't take on f3, but we walk right into this. Bishop takes. Now you can't take because you're like that. Of course, knight g2, white doesn't have to take it. What on earth happens here? Knight f4, rook g3.
Do you think that your friend slash former colleague, is she still doing Friday?
Oh, queen e6. Oh, look at that. Rook g2, bishop f3. Looks like white's killed themselves. Queen g6. Queen e6. I didn't even see that. It's a one mover. I think rook g3 might be a simpler option, but that is absolutely a ludicrous position. It's one of the hardest one movers we've seen in a while. There's just so many weird pins that you can miss really simple stuff. Right? In theory, queen e6 is simple. You're just taking their queen while mating them in one move. But the position's so messed up and disorienting that I didn't see it coming. Okay, game position. Bishop d5 played. Leviathan down to 15 seconds. And centralizes the queen, looking at the bishop, defending both knights, and attacking d4. And idea is here, you've also cut off king h8, and you're going to try and continue the attack with an exchange sack. But, I mean, the king can hide on h7. How will this work out? The time trouble is just too terrible, though. I mean, like, you just can't. You can't play a position like this 30 seconds at a time on each move. Leviathan definitely needed to make some of those early moves a little bit faster. It was mildly mentioned, but after f5, b5, there was 7 minutes to choose f5 before queen h4, between f5 and queen h4. When black played b5, you can't spend another 6 minutes on queen h4. Queen h4 is obviously what you want to do now, right? And then 4 minutes on bishop h6. You're not allowed to think on every single move. 10 minutes on queen h4 versus queen g5. I mean, you have to pick some of your spots. Otherwise, here you are, just flagging in a crazy middle game. Good night, Lauren. It's good so far. Yeah. It's been good every single night we've done it, actually. I can't remember a bad fight night. I mean, sometimes I'm tired, but there's always somebody bringing it. Yeah, crippling social anxiety sounds bad. Especially since you also seem like somebody who enjoys socializing to some extent. Anxiety's bad. I've got a kid suffering from anxiety really badly, really badly. I don't have tons of anxiety, but I have some. But as far as like playing as far as playing in our Friday night fights, Lauren, couldn't you make a misleading chess.com handle? Like, not Lauren. Perhaps Jim 77. And then just play a game. Nobody would even know it was you. I don't know if that's like a solution to all your situations, but if you really wanted to just personally have that feeling of that fight night, you wouldn't ever have to tell anybody that you'd fought. I think I'm generally a low anxiety person, so it makes it hard for me to understand my daughter's situation or the situations of other people with anxiety, because I'm kind of a relatively relaxed person. Now we will know who Not Lauren is. I was thinking you'd be even sneakier than that. It was kind of Yeah, that was kind of a joke. Is it against community guidelines?
Well, they want you to do these.
I don't think it's against. Oh, is it against community guidelines on chess.com to have two accounts, Dabo? I don't know. I've got two accounts. I think a lot of people have two accounts on chess.com. Is it really against the guidelines? Yeah, chess.com knows my other account is me. But Lauren wouldn't have to tell us. That's the point. Lauren could participate in dojo fight nights without any other dojoers knowing that she had participated, right? F4. Okay, so this is truly threatened. The knight can probably go to e4. It goes to f5. Oh, that's what happens eventually when you've got no time. It's got to be a blunder, right? The square is defended 3 times by black, right? So like rook f5 looks like the end of the game, right? Yeah. And the knight could have gone to e4, and the game would just go on, right? In fact, did white also have rook f4? And if queen g3, rook f8, check, cleaning up. And if rook f4, queen f4, life goes on, sort of, right?
Is she willing to go to Rogers? Is she like wanting to get better?
No,
Okay.
wasn't willing, didn't want to. It's been a struggle.
That's really tough. Yeah.
I guess after rook f8, we're kind of on the back foot holding these. Yeah. I think knight e4 is clean, but I think Dabo's saying you could have also sacked the exchange here first. Black takes, I don't know which way. Oh, wait, you've got queen d5 coming. Rook takes e3. Oh, my lord. Rook takes e3. And just didn't have time to look at this move, right? Ay, ay, ay. Oh, but Viral Sigma says it's not over. There's rook f5 here. Knight takes f5. If knight takes queen d5, of course, and if queen takes rook e3. Oh, wow. Is there any chance Leviathan saw all that in 10 seconds? Leviathan played knight f5 in 10 seconds. There's no way. It's just madness, craziness, and luck that's holding this white position together right now.
So funny. My husband taught middle school for a while. He really likes that age group, and I'm like, you're the only one. They're so hard. I'm a family medicine doctor, and I find that's like the hardest age group to doctor to.
There are many people like you, but I'm not the only one. The whole school was staffed with people who like middle schoolers.
Yeah, you have to have a certain affinity for it. I totally agree with that.
Yes, it's true.
It's impossible that white saw all that and didn't find just rook takes e3, right?
Our daughter White started there, and then the pandemic.
Ay, 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 mamma mia. Too much stress, Leviathan, too much stress. Yeah, okay. Classic question from Lauren. Why is it that sometimes people play good moves with little time and bad moves with lots of time? Is it a matter of just bad visualization and calculation that confuses your instincts, and if you just guessed, you would guess better than what you come up with when you think for a long time? It depends. Some people also make bad moves quickly sometimes and good moves slowly, right? It just sort of stands out a little bit more when you play a bad move after a long think or a good move after a short think. There's a little bit of, I think, luck or statistic or randomness to either situation, right? Rook e8 played. I thought that might come in. Attacking the queen. 20 seconds for Leviathan. So there's an element of like chance when you think for a long time or a short time, right? When you play a move quickly, there's a certain chance that you get the move right. When you think a long time, there's a certain chance you get the move right. The chances of getting the move right,
Oh, I know her. That's my friend.
if a position is super complicated, thinking a long time
Person connected us and helped
might increase your chances from like,
that my daughter really she doesn't have autism.
40% to 45% or 50%. It's not like you just find the solution. You're not a computer. And if you look at critical moments, even at super GM levels, when there's only 2 or 3 candidate moves, they might get the right move, only 50, 60% of the time. It's that complicated. And so that's not that much better than just flipping a coin if you have no time. The second part that's really important that Dabo mentioned is this. In general, when people are thinking a long time, it's probably because they don't know what they're supposed to do in that position. And if they're playing quickly, it's either because they have no time or because they know what to do in the position. So when you see people like Jesse also often talking about long think, wrong think, the reason somebody's thinking a long time and the reason they get the move wrong are actually both symptoms of the same thing. It's probably a position that's really darn hard for them, right? And whether they thought a short time or a long time, it's a position where they were likely to fail, relatively speaking. Okay, white plays queen f4. Black can now take. White can now take.
But I agree with you. So smart, really intelligent, and smart about how she thinks about neurodiversity.
Bishop f3, gf3. Looks like white comes out golden. King h7, getting off the file. Logical. Now white needs to save the rook, keep the knight covered. If queen c7, there's rook f7. It doesn't seem right. Maybe rook f2. Maybe rook f2. All right, we got a super long answer here, maybe from BK Blunders.
Doing them herself. I can reconnect you if that's the case, and we're just tell you her list if she's not.
So I had a game over the board recently where I saw the engine move by just calculating 2 moves deep. But then I actually calculated 6 moves deep and saw that my opponent was forking my 2 pieces at the end, so I shied away from the winning move. However, if I calculated 7 moves deep, then I would have seen my rook pinning the pawn. So I would have made the correct move if I thought less. I made the wrong move because I thought longer. If you thought even longer, you might have again made the right move, right, BK Blunders? Like if you looked even another move ahead. So it's almost like the random chance of, do you stop your calculation at 2 moves, 4 moves, 6 moves, 7 moves? At different horizons, you will or won't get the right move. This was also very clear in the early days of computer programming, right? When computers were pretty weak and they were teaching them how to play, they had like really clear, like the depth is 6 moves or the depth is 7 moves. And basically the computer wouldn't even recapture the move after that, right? It would go up, so it would like see a variation where at the end it captures something and it stops right where it captures before you recapture and it says, oh, I'm winning, and it plays that line. So, okay. Rook f2 was played. Rook f7, queen g4. White is living on 15 seconds on that last move. Another good approach here was king h2, g4, but I mean, what can you say when you've got 15 seconds? What can we comment other than that, it'd be nice to have more time. Also, bonsoir, Francois. Nice to see you. And Francois thinks that most of his mistakes come either from playing quickly or slowly rather than something intermediate to that. Could be. All right. Queen trade, relieving some of the pressure, but still careful for this knight. It can't retreat because the rook's undefended. So white needs to play something like king h2, g4 even here, I think. I don't know. I think wrong would be doubling rooks to defend it. That's leaving g2 hanging to various tactics, right? You do something like this, you're asking for something like that, right? It's just too fragile a structure. You need king h2, g4, I think. And the position is probably pretty close to equal right now. Let's see. King h2 played. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that. Right. So Elise, I mean, chess is so complicated. There's so many different ways you can go right or wrong. So Elise is saying, there was a game where she was calculating 6 or 7 moves ahead for a 4-move stretch and great complications. And on each move, the opponent played a move on the very first move that was not one of the moves she'd calculated. So all her variations were out the window, and all the time spent and all the effort was wasted. So looking ahead is mostly valuable if you can actually predict some of your opponent's moves. If you can't predict any of their moves, it's a very limited value to look ahead.
They don't. Their brains are wired differently, and they're coping with that. They found a coping mechanism, and for them, it's OCD.
Black wins back the pawn on the queen side, so we've got equal material in the endgame. These pawns are both a little bit weak. So white's going to want to attack d4, black's going to want to attack d3. That's a good interesting endgame. Can black play h5? Maybe. Maybe a good move, trying to crack at the structure on the light squares. Black, having this bishop, should be able to fight back on those squares. Who is better? I think it's very close to equal, Arkix. I think it's very close to equal. I'd maybe have I don't even know which side I'd have a slight preference for, because black has this outside passer now with the bishop versus knight. But this pawn is a little bit weaker than this one, so white's got better chances to win a pawn in the near future. And if black just goes and trades the bishop for the knight, that'll be the most like equalish or drawish of the options, I would say, Arkix. Because then there's like such a margin to be a little bit worse and still hold a draw in a rook ending. So I think with this move, if black takes on f5 pretty soon, it'll be much more drawish than winning or losing. But if black wants to win the game, then instead of taking the knight, they should do what Francois is advocating, which is a5. White could play a move like b4, which would hurt black's pawn majority pretty good. Also, rook a1, I think, is very playable here. But either move, rook a1 or b4, if black trades on f5 and plays rook g to f6, it's going to be very close to equal, this endgame. Rook a1, the choice and the trade. So we got that right. Exactly, statement. For most people, that's the case. Most of us get something wrong by move 2. So looking 4, 5, 6 moves ahead is of limited value. Oh, nice choice by Gaurav or Leviathan. Trading this rook emphasizes this, right? Whereas if gf5 here, it's not as obvious for white. I mean, I know it's still okay with a move like this, but rook f5 is nice. Takes. Rook g7, defending here. And now white could try to get a little advantage with rook a5. Idea taking this and defending that passer over there. And rook a5 is played. Leviathan showing some endgame skills and some speed here, emerging from that insane middle game. And rook b7 clears the way for the king's centralization, which could lead to a real advantage for white. White is definitely better in this version of the rook ending, thanks to this rook f5 move instead of the gf5 move. Actually, this move helped white get a little upper hand here. Wow. b4, nope. You gotta rush your king in. Gotta rush your king in, dog. Here comes the king. Still, I mean, it's nice, right? We've got black tied down and we always have rook a6. Black's played this a little too passively, I would say. The proper approach to a position like this would be to do something like rook here, king here. You're planning to go king f6 and attack this pawn, and rook e3 or rook e2 to go after these pawns. And then all your pieces are active and you draw, even if you end up down a pawn. But now black's really risking getting into a pretty tough position to play. Okay, they recognize it. Look, they abandon the B pawn and activate. Now they got to do something like, rook e3. Yeah, all right, B-town, turning it around. Now, I think you can take this pawn with check, come back. This rook's getting here. Yeah, this was in time. I think black should still save this. White doesn't want to play f6. They want to bring the king to f6. So what does white want to do here? I think like h4, rook b7, something like that. Hey, Jacob. Rook b5 was playable as well, yeah. Yeah, maybe rook b5 last move was good too. Good point. You're in line with it. How much... I mean, this would more or less be similar to if white went a7 and then came back around for the b pawn, which I don't even think is necessarily white's best option here. I think white's best option is h4, rook h7 maybe. Going two pass pawns against two pass pawns. It should be a draw. They're doing great. But the idea would be that in a position like this, if you go h4 here, you want to come here. And now it's awkward for black to defend against king f6, getting in front of the pawn when you can't check. Normally, you would say like, let's push this pawn to make it stronger while black's taking. But then, this position is very easy for black to defend. The only way for white to make progress is a king on one of these squares, and you can just check it away. So actually, weirdly, even though your candidate for winning the game is the f-pawn, you need your king in front of that f-pawn. So, you wait, you preserve this pawn, which could be another candidate for queening. And after this, you come here. This presents black some technical challenges. This is probably the only drawing move, with the idea of king here, rook check. But this move allows king takes pawn, right? And black's not going to be pumped about giving up their counterplay immediately the moment that they got counterplay, right? But I bet that rook c3, well, maybe it's a hard thing to bet, but I suspect rook c3 is the only good move in this position. I'm computer checking out of curiosity. Nailed it! Go, David! Woo! Only drawing move, rook c3. Ho-ho! That's what studying rook and pawn endings for 750 hours in your life will do for you. Nailed it! Yeah! Ha! That's such a good position. I'm going to clip it as a puzzle, too. Grab this little position for our endgame puzzles on the dojo. Apologies if I got too pumped up about myself there and it offended somebody. Not my intention to offend. It's not my intention to offend. But I love endgames. And I love rook endgames, so you know. Yeah, Jacob, this kitchen table corner thing is sort of like one of the worst spots. My leg is pressed against one of the table's legs, and I can't move. I have got like 0 degrees of freedom here. If I were a ghost stone, I'd be taken off the board at this point. But the library was good. Cool. Maybe I'll work there again someday. All right, rook a7 again. Rook a3. Going passive to preserve this little crooked dude. I guess white's idea is to try and like come here and go after this. That's not a bad idea. It's a challenging move. King e5 here. King e4 is less challenging because there's rook here. King e5. If your opponent defends this pawn, then we do that to them, right? Remember me? That's crushing. So king e5 is much sneakier. And I don't know how black defends against king e5, but maybe I could find it, huh? What you guys would bet on me now. All right, let's see. King here. There's no good defense. That's my answer.
That is where I feel like you really start to need it. Like
Black's in some true trouble after this king e5 move.
those other people around you. Yeah.
Like there's certainly enough kids
True trouble.
who could do that.
At least bets that I can't find the defense for black because there isn't one. Yeah. Yeah. All right, we got king e4, rook check, and king e5 one move later. I think white's still a little bit better, right? This black king's badly placed, and this pawn's a little bit threatening.
We realized as much until we
So there's many options for white to slip into an advantage here.
I was like, oh, it must be the French parenting. And then we met, like, we finally found the other family with neurodiverse kids. And we were like, oh, their kids are like the perfect kids.
Rook comes back to h3. So white didn't lose any time with king e4 to e5, did they? Black moves back and forth. The king can come here or snack the pawn.
They are.
The Leviathan has a choice of delights, and at this point is cleanly over 2 minutes with pretty good endgame instincts, apparently. And the 30-second increment, I think the time is fine for playing out this endgame here, actually.
It was like, it's not their parenting techniques. These kids are just not neurodiverse.
The camera's so good, the reflection on the glass could be unfortunate. Is there something horrible in my room here, other than a bunch of mess? You can see how much crafting stuff is cramping me in here.
You're in a really quiet culture where there's a lot of rules. Like Japan, we went to Japan over the summer, and my daughter loved it. And I said, why? She's like, everyone's so quiet. Everyone is just so orderly. And if you were
That sounds like
first there, no
OCD perfection. Like my daughter would love that too. She loves
Yeah, you can see all the way to the hallway that leads here.
there's rules that are
Yeah.
here.
It's just mess in every direction. I don't think there's anything
structure.
more shameful about my living situation than some mess.
Exactly like how it's gonna work. Same every time. Yeah. So that is definitely the
And I've got no way out of showing you the mess in this little corner here. I can't control anything else about my setup.
Other European countries as well. They have my brother was in Denmark and had a good Danish friend, and she was just telling me 2 days ago. She's like, oh, I think my daughter has autism, and
Did you folks know
they
that with just 2 ingredients you can make a delicious beverage? Milk plus banana. You just put milk and banana in a blender and you mix them, and it's really good.
you're European, right? Yourself, you're French, and it's a different way of being around people, and I don't know.
true. I feel like the whole culture is a little bit like autistic sometimes. Like they have to teach everybody to say hello and goodbye. Like they have these like protocols. Like
Oh, looks like the other game we were watching, Michelle
it's very
Amy defeated Alex J. Gustafsson and received the GG there.
for neurodiverse people. We're just more accepted.
I guess that's kind of like a pure banana smoothie without any ice. Sure.
I don't know. They're just seen as a person for that, and they accept it and move on.
All right, so the pawn was taken preferentially over king f6.
Sometimes
It's a tough choice. It's a tough choice.
high pressure environment in the Bay Area with so many demands on expectations on our kids.
All right, Boss Steven, I didn't see you watching the freestyle chess, but I'm glad to hear that you watched it. Any thoughts on the format, the games, the commentary, anything like that?
All these neurodiverse kids, society and the Bay Area just puts a lot of pressure on everybody.
And everything moves so fast, and there's so
Korchnoi Rook Endgame book is still classic. Yeah. Okay, took the pawn. Oh man, took another pawn. Counterplay, please. Says B-Town, who probably just can't believe that Gaurav is still playing this game with this little increment here.
but they're more relaxed. Absolutely, when nothing's going on, like basically they just went in the room and got their books, And my daughter would have been like, "What are we playing? We're gonna go soon. We're gonna
Welcome to the dojo, Eden McGorlick.
Here, exactly. Here it's like,
Do I know John Feinstein? No.
and in France, if you have downtime, which you have a ton of
I like working with Danya.
or like hang out with your
It's
and it's just like
it's mildly intimidating when he starts punning as fast as he does.
part of life. It's like
Um,
I think
but overall,
we were living, there was very few
it just pushes you
French guy, and she was like
to do better yourself,
what are we gonna
to be with somebody who's that sharp and fast, which I think is a good thing. I was nervous because of technical problems on Monday. I've told the story on stream already yesterday, but I had like reasons to be in a sort of bad, nervous, anxious headspace on Monday with some really bad technical problems. But in general, it's great to work with somebody who's really good. Even if you might feel slightly inferior, it pushes you to do well. So I think for me, I like working with him.
like childhood anxiety that we have over here? Did you feel like
Suze,
heard about
you could do the 24 to 2500 training program if you're over 2500 and you want to. But but it's FIDE ratings. You're an over the board grandmaster?
I think it's a societal thing, but I also think it's a theory thing. I think it's a result as well of more social isolation that happened during the pandemic. They got their kids back in school. They were out
Yeah, boss Steven, I do like the idea of having more spots chosen by qualification and instead of invitation. Already freestyle's doing the freestyle organization is already a bit better than a lot of classical tournaments in that it's not 100% invite, right? They have 2 qualification spots. Their current idea is to have 2 qualification spots in each of their Grand Slam events. So that's already it's already a step in the right direction, but like you, I would want even more qualifying, yeah. Because it makes really fantastic qualifying tournaments as well.
live our lives, and it was so different and a little bit jarring.
You were at the World Rapid and Blitz, Elise? Nice. I'm also very happy that he did well there. Very happy. All right, so white could go rook b8 to h8 here, sack the f pawn and push the b pawn, or try and hold the pawn a little bit longer with rook c5, and then push the b pawn. In either case, it seems pushing the b pawn would be the attempt to win. Let's see how Leviathan approaches it, sacks the pawn, and goes with the b pawn. Cuts off the king. Oh, man. What technique? Okay, black fights back. Keeps the king cut off. All the techniques on a high level. King c5. That's fantastic play by white.
When they're in a cafe or a restaurant, they're engaging in conversations. You see teens talking to each other. No phone.
Yes, Francois, wasn't it great to see some miniatures? Oh, it was so cool. I've missed those. And I'm not pumped on the miniatures where somebody hangs material on move 2 or 3 to just a random pattern. Or move 5 or 6. But I like the games where it's got that 1800s feel, like somebody gets their pieces tangled up or awkward, or somebody sacks something, or somebody gets ahead in development and it feels like, an old school Evans Gambit or something like that, Did you see last year, Francois, in the GOAT challenge, the game between Aronian and Kamer?
It's definitely very, very different, and there's less screens for the kids. There's a lot more.
Because that game is exactly what I'm happy to see occasionally. And it just doesn't exist in classical chess anymore, right? Check is weird. What? Don't you want to advance the king? Wait, that was really weird. I think rook e5 may have just blown it. That move made no sense. There's 2 moves that make sense here. King c6, right? Trying to queen the pawn. And rook h5, getting behind this other pawn and saying that if black comes over, you've got checking distance to fight their king back. Oh, that was slightly painful. Okay, black goes back passive. That's a great chance for white. Now white can go here, push the king back, and move the d pawn up as well.
Watched by someone else. Also, just so much more like kids go to the boulangerie and buy baguettes, and you've probably heard about that with Japanese kids too. But that, just having the trust in them to go take care of stuff, builds
Oh, it's intense down to the final pawn this game. Bravo to both players. Isn't B and D pawn a theoretical draw? Aching Golf asks. Oh, look. Threatening B7 and then B8. Cutting off King C8. High class move. So Rook C1, King here, Rook B1 is literally the only try. And B-Town finds it. King goes this way. Okay, he wants to come around here. Take this. In general, this position looks lost to me. The black king is not making it in front of the pawn, the B pawn. So, I don't know. So, I guess the idea here for black, if you won this pawn and defended this pawn, you could then defend the Lucena. But if you only defend this pawn with rook h1, then white wins with b7. And if you only go and take this pawn and white captures this pawn and then plays rook c4, you get Lucena'd and lose. So I think black's lost here. I'm not sure about the B and D pawn theoretical draw question, Aching Golf, but I think, or Aching Golf, but I think this position's lost. Francois agrees with me, says black looks lost. Rook A and C pawn is a draw if the defending king is in the right position and the defending rook. Of course, the Saturday Rapid is going to be tomorrow, January 12th, not January 5th, for those of you seeing Mubot over here. That's right, Aaron. White has put up an awesome fight for super long. Both players can be proud of themselves for this game. I mean, remember, White, it felt like was going to win the game very early in the opening. Oh, this is a creative defense from B-Town. Oh, not letting the D-pawn come up and join the action. Keeping the king from stepping out from behind the pawn. You can play king b8 and b7, but then you've got to get your king out from there. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, I mean, Leviathan's going to have to find another one or two good technical moves to put this game away. But remember, in the opening, it was kind of like White should have been more or less rolling over Black after Black took that pawn on f5, bishop h6, knight g5. It looked like White was just winning for several variations. And then Black fought back. Knight g4, knight e3 was fantastic. And then brought the queen over to the king side, gained space with f5. We got an insane middle game. So it's an impressive game all around by both. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for your support. Oh no, yeah, I wouldn't leave for good, Mickelwold, without saying something.
Because I remember when you said your daughter's name, it was kind of unusual. I thought, that's weird. I feel like I know that name. I feel like, do I know that kid? Because I was thinking in my head, like, I know a lot of kids because I'm a teacher, but maybe I know her from Vandersloot
You might,
or from
yeah.
there.
But she just does ballet. She just got promoted to ballet 4 and is very excited. She was like,
Ballet's
yeah,
great. And
Got myself a biscotti here.
she's
H3.
anymore, but she
White could take the pawn.
ballerina there, and she also had OCD, and I think that was one of the things that really tempt her going.
Probably doesn't need to. Could also play b7.
Queries, and yeah, I think that when there's that deep passion interest that, or that thing that keeps you physically busy, I think that's really good.
yeah.
And I wish that
There's that almondy taste in this thing.
About how we think that like regular exercise more than from the league would probably be really benefit her. It's hard to figure out how to do that.
This move might be even stronger than this now.
it's hard, but it really is worth it because
Oh, but either's good enough. Doesn't matter too much.
they've been for the time it's been she's involved in a sport of some kind.
Yeah. It's so hard to can't think of high school or these sports. Well,
Yeah,
Maybe a final defense here against this.
I know. I'm sure you've tried every form of bribery or possible. Like, I don't know. Wait.
we've done everything, and the last thing that she did was I said that she had to be involved in something. She's like, you have to, Kostya, you have to be involved in something.
Playing tensor king here with rook check.
Wow.
But one thing I know in general, folks, about any endgame with a single pawn is if you cut off this king along a rank, you've won the game. So, for example, against rook g4, I know that this move wins the game. I don't need to look any further. I know it's done. You cut the king off like this, you'll eventually win. Similarly, after rook a6, I immediately know we can go rook h5 check. Can't go this way because we would get the rook. King will have to come back, and then it's cut off, so I know it's winning. So it's that's one, I think, pretty useful piece of rook endgame theoretical knowledge. If you cut a king off along a rank, then it could be a B pawn, a C pawn, a D pawn. It doesn't matter where, doesn't matter what rank. It's game over. You've won.
Go on point. Because she's like, I know that's in her too much. I don't want to. Doesn't cost 550. You just have to pick a different physical activity. At least I made a super clear rule with her. I was like, you have to do one physical activity.
Kraai says you can also just defend your pawn and bring the king over.
She loves rules. I hope that continues into middle school.
Yeah, and I mean, this rook h5 move, it also takes the king away from c6, right? So now black doesn't have rook c6 check without the king defending it. That's a pretty easy move for converting here. I wasn't yet calculating how to win. I was just saying, just giving you guys what I think is a very useful piece of knowledge about rook endgames. A king cut off along a rank, it's done. Any pawn, anywhere. There are lots of ways to win here. King c8 did not look particularly like one of them to me.
Fingers crossed. Just hard because, she has friends. They're not zoned for Longfellow. Nobody's not zoned for
That's literally the move that black was planning to defend against.
She's gonna have to make new friends.
Yeah, she will. She'll make new friends, and then it'll be good. I think slower, better. I have to say that her Kraai has been really challenging to pick up, and I didn't really necessarily want her to.
Good, Leviathan admits the mistake and goes back. Excellent. King here. That blocks the rook from coming here, so king a8 looks like a pretty good option. If you don't see king a8, then d4 is a normal
technical move, giving your rook access. But I agree with Alex. Between time pressure and fatigue from such a long game, anything can happen. Leviathan's been playing on the increment since move, 15, and it's move 68. It's like 50 move rule. You got to be tired. Finds king a8 though, and that's gonna do it. That's gonna be the last thing White needed to find. Still on 1 minute.
She has to be invested too. Like, if you forced her, that would have been not good either. So, yeah, it's hard.
Anyway,
It's hard.
cross that bridge, but and fascinating. I have 19.
Kraai, what time zone are you in?
Rogers might be like
Do you have any interest in a training game sometime between Monday and Wednesday this coming week?
We'll just be indifferent. I think it's one of those ever-evolving things like marriage.
Sewell. Timing could be weird.
But I hope this. Honestly, my goal for her is
I'm playing a tournament on Friday, so I have to rest on Thursday.
and not have
I've not been in, real training shape the last,
because I'm like, she'll never be able to write. So
probably 2 months. At least a month. At least the whole holiday break and all. At least 4 or 5 weeks I haven't been in real training. So I think one training game this week would be sweet for me.
control of her employees.
If it were to be a nighttime game,
I wonder how many CEOs have OCD.
it would have to be... If it's 3:20 for you, it would have to be like 1 o'clock. Because for me, it's 10:20, and if I play chess much past midnight, I will ruin the number one plank of my preparation plan for the tournament, which is to sleep well.
I can see it happening and just
The number one thing in my plan
anyway. Oh, I really, really appreciate talking with a peer who's experienced
is to
the same stuff. So really appreciate your time.
is to sleep.
Yeah, no problem. I wish I had. I mean, I didn't have anyone to talk to when Iker was 7, and had this, or 8 or 9, even or 10. It took so long to find people. It's not that we're not applying somewhere far away, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
White or black at the moment doesn't
There wasn't that many spots.
matter to me with where I am in my preparation. You've completely changed your repertoire. All right. Bravo to both players. Hats off. Excellent battle. Excellent battle. Yeah, at the moment I don't have like a white or black preference. I just want to, practice sitting at the board and calculating a little bit and, trying to be calm about it all. All right. Super, super, super. I'm kind of curious to see some of the games that have already ended. Like, there was this game between Gustafsson and Amy,
What we can do is just put your best foot forward and put your faith in there, and hopefully it comes out, right?
which I saw the beginning of and was curious about.
Move it to the right. Maybe it takes another cog, and it just kind of goes cog to the right.
Knight a4, that was logical. Doesn't trade.
That Denise, so if you not have your number, I forgot your name.
And now White's advantage is diffused. Yeah. E1 was hanging. Ah, shoot. We didn't notice that when we were watching. Oops.
Love to hear and learn from your experience.
Ah.
Sure, no problem. Okay, have a great night.
You too. Have a good night. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Oh, nice, Socratic. That's very... Thank you very much. I will send you that. Excellent. Ay, ay, ay. We didn't see this coming, Alex. We thought Queen F3 and Knight A4 might be good. The other thing we looked at for a while here, Alex, at this phase of the game was like Knight F7, Knight F7, Knight D5, e5, e6. And it seemed basically playable, not like winning or losing. Alternatively, I suppose a move like, bishop f4 should be playable. I mean, you don't have to do anything crazy, but this knight a4, queen b4 hitting the rook, and that diffused your opening. Dang. Well spotted by Michelle Amy, because nobody in chat saw that. I've already played training games with you, Elise. You're already strong enough. Aching Ulf saw it an hour later. Does that count? It counts for something, Aching Ulf. Yeah. I mean, still better than me never seeing it, I guess. Okay, so let's close that one. Let's see what other games we've got that we're watching here. Maybe I'll go to the 1600 plus arena and grab a game from them for a moment, because their games tend to go a little bit longer, so might still be going. Let's see what we got. A game well underway, and a game a bit earlier on. And here's the one that's more on the way. All these are the top 2 rated players from the beginning of the arena. Knight, bishop, rook, rook, knight, bishop, rook, rook. Okay. Yeah, maybe we'll have a look at this. So I'm playing a tournament next week, and one of the most important plank of my preparation for said tournament is sleeping. So instead of commentating till midnight, I'm going to commentate till 11 to get a little more sleep. So I think it's fine to tune into this one that's a little further along. It looks very scary for white at the moment with these 3 active pieces, and white is obviously going to be weak on the light squares since there's an unopposed light squared bishop, and white's got the dark squared bishop. That said, this bishop's attacked, right? So maybe king f4 could be a key line. Attacking the knight, so if bishop c4, king f5. Good night, Viral Stigma. The event I'm playing is called the Golden State Open. Did I ever, Leviathan? Did I ever? You've got like 2 hours of tape to review. Lucky you. And knowing what we know from you from last week, you might watch it 4 or 5 times. So I guess it's I guess you're the one who's going to make the most use of it. All right, my first guess move, king f4, comes in. Often rook e4 would be a killer move, right? Driving the king forward. But here after king f5, we walk into the discovery because the bishop's attacked. And, yeah. I don't really see a follow-up for black there. So I think king f4 could be played. And now black's got to do something about this threat, I guess. Maybe something like bishop c2, in which case white's pawn structure survives and white's doing fine. This position gives me a weird feeling, almost like a king's gambit. Tell me that Schocksteel did not play the king's gambit. Scandinavian. Whoa. For a moment, it looked like that opening was headed for a win for white, and now it looks like it's headed for a loss for white, and we know that it somehow gets into this current position, which looks like anything could be happening, huh? Yeah, here black could try g6, king here, rook here, thinking they're still attacking. But remember, white's got this route here as well. So, like rook d3, what's black really threatening? This move, you maybe were dreaming of an insane checkmate like this, right? But white has an escape square. You are dreaming of that. You just want to play h6 at this point. Absolutely nutty. And if I defend e6 more, you just go here. That's bananas. Same on rook e1. You go here. So maybe instead of taking this bishop, when black doubles, white's already up one piece. Maybe white should go here. This is insanely creative. There's no way it works, but it's super cool that you thought of it. Super cool. And against this move, I guess we would do something like this. Yeah. Here, if I played instead of king f6 this, then you would have played here actually, right? But I have bishop c3. And if the king can go hide on h6, he's looking pretty okay. This is one exception, but unfortunately, once black sacked everything, the king can go a different direction, you know. Okay, wild times. So I don't think rook e4 is going to be the move. I think it's going to be bishop c2. It was already bishop c2. And white has already responded, probably with rook d2. Yeah, look at that. Sometimes your instinct just gets everything, you see? That's partly why sometimes you get the right move thinking quickly versus thinking slowly. It's just odds, you know. If you think quickly, you've maybe got a 45% chance. If you think forever, you've got like a 48% chance. It's a lot of coin flipping and yeah. The key is to keep attacking this bishop so that still against rook e4 you have this kind of a move. I guess now black might do this and then you just take. Black has played rook e4. Slightly strange. I mean, white's going to be obligated to check black on this, right? To see if black's figured things out correctly. It looks like king f5 should probably win for white, no? King f5, g6, king g5 is fine. King f5, rook c4, you could go rook c2. Then is there anything with g6, king f6? No, no. Black's just going to take on c4, take on c2, and play with the rooks against the pieces. And when I said white's winning, that's like an exaggeration. It's just the end game goes on. Two pieces against a rook. Black might be able to collect some pawns on c4, maybe on a2. Yeah, make a good endgame of it. What white can't do is go king e5, rook e8, mate. And probably not king g5, h6, king h5, bishop to g6. Also unlikely to be good for white. So pretty much rook c2 is the only legal move, but white is thinking. Maybe I'm missing something. Are there any other legal moves for white here other than taking? Taking happens. My instinct here, first instinct is rook d1. Nailed it. Go, David. Go, David. All right, so the idea of rook d1, the first idea was that if black takes one of these pawns, then my rook's behind the passer and I go bishop c7 and looks pretty good for white. The second part of the idea was if black goes rook c8 defending this pawn and threatening both of these pawns, I can now go rook d2 and trade the aggressive rook, or at least not lose any more pawns, right? Because how am I supposed to not lose one of these pawns here before I go rook d1, right? They're double attacked. Finally, I noticed that luckily rook here avoids rook c5, winning the d pawn. So for example, if in this position you said, not my g pawn, they don't have to take the a pawn. They might go here, hit your bishop, defend this, it's got nowhere to go, take this. Now how are you ever winning this endgame as white, right? So, in summary, I again stumbled on the right move instantaneously just off of instinct. It happens a lot to everybody. The difference between masters is more and more comes down to 2 or 3 moves per game, where there are lots and lots of moves where they would agree on things or all find the right moves. And if you can ratchet up the complexity and difficulty in certain ways, you can increase that percentage. You can increase that number of moves that make some difference. But here, rook d1 is the only move. Hey, Papa. That's right, Kraai. If you play an uncommon opening, that's another thing that increases how many moves will be sort of key moves or moves where people disagree by making it uncommon. Yeah. I haven't played f4 much of late. I think I played it 1 round in Capelle-Legrand as a master. Otherwise, I mostly played it as a beginner against other beginners. Long, long ago. I had a very, very interesting game in Capelle-Legrand. What I found to Kraai actually is that at a master level, almost every master has at some point figured out a pretty decent way to play against the bird. Like in my experience, I never really get a good position with it. Maybe because I don't play it enough. I didn't have enough ideas stocked up. That's possible. But I played it a lot as a kid, so I have some familiarity with it. I have played the Dutch even a bit later in life as a master. I've played the Dutch and the Leningrad Dutch, so there's some structures that are and ideas that are familiar. And yeah, I just didn't get good positions with white in some of my more recent, even just like casual or blitz games with other masters. Who's Grandmaster Raven? Sturt, huh? Sure, that's a nice idea. Very nice idea. That's very interesting, Francois. For anyone in Twitch, Francois over on YouTube is saying that Furman made a study on how grandmaster thinking process differs compared to master thinking process and amateur thinking process. And the main difference he found was that the grandmaster in a lot of positions had only 1 or 2 candidate moves, while the masters would have maybe 4 and the amateurs maybe 5. So they're working on more wrong moves. That also tells you that the instinct of the grandmaster is almost always considering the correct move instantaneously. They may just be considering 2 different options, and it might take them a while to weed out which of those 2 options is wrong. White has not played for a long time here. I don't know. Given my thought process, I can't tell you what would cause a master to be thinking here as white instead of playing rook d1. I'm unable to say what white could possibly be considering instead of rook d1. I can say that for me, it varies by positionocratic, depending on my familiarity and complexity and so forth. Here, for example, I have 1 candidate move, right? And, well, this particular game that we've just been watching, I had only 1 candidate move a lot of the time. The game that we watched previously between Leviathan and B-Town, a lot of the game I had 1 or 2 candidate moves, but there was a brief phase where it exploded to 3 or 4 for a short period of time. But yeah, I didn't have a lot of candidate moves for most of that game. Yeah, it was generally limited to 2 moves for much of that game as well. Would bishop d2 be a consideration? I don't think so. Your idea is if they take a2, you have rook c1. And then you can always break through with d6, huh? So like here you have d6. And similarly here you have d6. Because you still have rook c8, whether or not there's a rook there. But let's say black goes here. You can't give up this pawn. Right? So you have to... The pawn's not easy to defend. I mean, you might have to go rook c5, and then black's got time to do whatever they want. Yeah, I think this rook d8 move refutes bishop d2. But that's right, Acratic. That's why white only has 1 move. No, white's position is fine, Acratic. It's 2 pieces against rook and pawn. And white finally played the right move. 9 minutes of thought. I don't know what white was thinking about other than rook d1. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, the idea is on d6 to go rook here. Francois says c6. No. Knight d4, maybe rook f2 saves black. That's weird. c6. You were thinking knight d4 as well, Francois? Normally knight d4, you know, rook c5, knight c6, that would be an easy cleanup. But knight d4, rook f2 looks like black's alive. Oh, wow. I didn't even see this ice cream appear next to me. Thank you. That's the kind of focus you want. You want to not even see ice cream approaching because of the chessboard. Okay, so here, 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 here. Huh. C6. What a funky position. Black played rook b8, by the way, folks. Developing, right? Can come here and all that. But rook d2 is pretty close to equal here. Yeah, at the end of my other line that I gave, you know, white can go rook d6 and knight c6 and try and save the rook and pawn ending. I suppose that's like maybe the best that white has, but I was afraid I was afraid this could somehow be bad. Maybe this way first. We still have to fight this. Still have to fight this rook endgame. So I wasn't pumped. But maybe that's the best we can do after c6. I don't know. Yeah, okay, that's much simpler, Kratik. D takes c6. If rook check here or wherever with the king, here c7 and then just rook d8. And if rook takes here, it's just, you know, whatever. You play any move. It's about equal, this endgame. Yeah, just d takes c6. Okay, so that's why c6 wasn't necessarily played. It's playable. Rook b8's playable as well. Let me check something. Where's my... Do I have it open? I guess not. Okay, let me try and reopen it. So I've got my plan for this week. Today there were 4 things I was supposed to do. I've done 3 of them and I've got 1 left. So we're off to a good start. Off to a good start on the training plan. Okay, rook b8. This is a very interesting endgame. These players have. Ice cream is overrated. Ice cream's decent. Hi, chess lover. I think I spotted you on the freestyle broadcast, right? They had a lag on the stream as a security measure, so I didn't read the chat so much because if I tried to answer chat questions, it was like 3 minutes out of sync. You were there, but almost everywhere. Well, okay. Which knight d4 line? Where do you want to play knight d4, Kraai? Right here, knight d4. What do you do then? Rook c5 or rook g2, or what are we going for? I don't think we can give white bishop c7, right? So you must be playing rook c5, I'm guessing. Brenda would only eat ice cream. Well, that can't be a good diet. Only ice cream. All right, so rook c5, knight c6, and then what did you want? Doubled rooks here? Trying to... That is pretty funny. That is pretty funny. I'll give you that. Hilarious, hilarious use of the doubled rooks. I've never seen that before. I guess you could call it a fork or a double attack. Yeah. Well, I don't know what to make of it. Okay, I mean, I guess, yeah, Kraai, probably this. Probably this. What else is black doing? You know, waiting around for bishop c7. Can't defend this, right? Well, I mean, we also don't really have a way to defend it. We don't have to push it. Could play this first. If rook d2, king e6. And if rook e2, then d6. Oh, look at that. Check, keeping the king away from e6. Woo. Yeah, f6. You know, I hesitated for a second between g6 and h5, and then I found f6. f6 leaves white still struggling to prove they've got enough. But, I mean, my guess would be it's a draw. Even a move like g3 or g4 could be enough to draw, right? King f8 instead, white would have d6. Threatening mate. So now you have to keep bringing the king, right? You get checked. If you go this way, that's not great, is it? If you go this way, white can always come here. So that's why you wouldn't want to play king f8. d6 and white has at least white has a draw. Pretty easily, I think. Right. Here you can go rook g2. White does something like this or whatever. And, yeah. It's eventually a draw. Is there a telltale sign of the resulting endings being drawish? Asked Boss Steven. One thing I look for, Boss Steven, is there anywhere on the board where you're strong enough to probably win the game? That's one thing to look at. So is there some area where you've got like a 3-on-1 or a 2-on-0, you know, like an advantage that's just undefendable long term? The other thing I look for is, do you have more active king and rook? If you ever have the more active king and rook, then there's a decent chance of winning. But here, there's starting to be reduced material. This king is stopping this pawn from queening. So it's fine. It's fine in placement for a draw from black's perspective. From white's perspective, you're down a pawn, but all your pieces are very active. And there's nowhere on the board where black has like a winning majority or something, right? Like, right, 2 pawns against 1, that doesn't look anything like a win. This doesn't look anything like a win, and the white pieces are well placed. So it seems easily within the margin of a draw based on like rules of thumb or instincts, you know? You played 2 by accident, Amy? Well, congrats. We saw some of your first game. It looked very well played. Hope you enjoyed. 2 a.m. in Quebec City. Okay. Francois, we have another Quebecois here. Yeah. Get your sleep. And take care. Thanks for playing. Oh, Kradik's also Quebecois. I didn't even realize that. So we're all Quebecois here tonight. Okay, let's see their live position. We've just assumed like a really crazy line. Rook b8. King e4 was played, defending this pawn. Rook c5. Kicking the bishop. Okay, no vest for the dreary. Let me see. Huh? Aren't you cheating by throwing the game? What? Maybe they went to the bathroom. Number 2. But first you didn't recapture your pawn. You sacked it. And then you put your king in front of your pieces. You can't say anything about your opponent when you start the game like this. Maybe they went off and read a comic book for half an hour. I'm sorry. Well, I admit I don't have as much experience in bong cloud positions as some people. But you really can't conclude much from this. Oh, that's a nice move. I guess that was the point of Queen F3. Craddock. No, I mean, I can't say anything about this game. Whereas the bread, your opponent played a normal looking game, given the circumstances. Yeah, it's unlikely they're actually from North Korea. I agree. Ah, somebody started a bullet game in my face. No. I assume if they were from North Korea, they'd be too afraid to take a picture of Kim Jong-un as their avatar or whatever, unless it's required and everybody has to do that. I really don't know much about North Korea. All right. So, bishop runs away, really far away. Uh-oh. No ketamine. Wow, that was quite a little tactic there, that rook d5, huh? Starting to look bad for white after that. So rook c5, bishop back, check Kavutskiy. King over, boom. Ay, ay, ay. I'm wondering if knight e5, f6, king d4 helps anything. Seems like it doesn't. Yeah, going passive is very rarely correct. That is true. Quite an exception. Huh. But I think the real mistake might be losing the A pawn right here. This is basically a pawn trade. This pawn was very weak. I think this move looks better at Kraai, right? your bishop's anchored, so you can go a5. If black defends this pawn, your king goes here. Right? Like rook check, king here. If here you've got this, which is fine. And if here, I mean, maybe you defend this pawn, but probably you just go like a5, rook g2, king a6, and you've got a pretty good counterplay here. Like, black's probably going to sack a rook for that pawn. There's no scenario where the king blockades it. a4. I don't see anything good for black after a4. That's the key to his endgame. Maybe, you know, black should do something like this and defend the pawn like so. But this looks very plausible for white because the a-pawn's always a threat. Your king's always near their a-pawn. What do you think? This is my guess as to where white went wrong. I mean, rook d5 check was fancy, but I don't see a way to avoid it at this point. And I'm not sure where else this bishop was supposed to go, right? d2, maybe? Not so much of a more active square than e1. But it would avoid this tactic. But something about this, it felt like the king's so good. But when white hung the a-pawn, I was like, uh-oh, that's going to be tough. So I think this is the key move here is a4. With a balanced / complicated endgame. In the game, I think white's going to be worse. As black takes this pawn. Uh-oh. There's a danger of losing the entire king side. There's a danger of losing the entire king side. Which brings up the question. I mean, this king is not going to make it back to g1. But for argument's sake, if this pawn were gone and these pawns were gone and white's king were over here, do you think the two pieces can hold off 3 passed pawns slowly advancing? All right, I've got my answer. Got my answer. Yep. That's my answer too. I think black should be able to win it. Now, could you sack your rook for the bishop and then win it with just 3 pawns against the knight? That seems like a basic endgame, and I don't know the answer. But I think rook and 3 pawns connected against bishop and knight, you can win it. I would emphasize controlling the color squares of the bishop, advancing everything together slowly. Yeah, I think you could do it. You've had the knight against 3 pawns, pure? I don't think I've ever had it, which is why I'm not finding any data point in my mind. I have some of the worst endgame throws of all time in classical chess from when I was a kid. Not in Blitz, but in true classical Kraai. Like 2 of the worst ones. One was I had knight versus rook, but I had a 3-on-1 on the queen side. There were no pawns on the king side, and my opponent's king was on the king side. And my knight and king could win the last pawn on the queen side, but somehow I did it the wrong way. Sacked my knight, sacked my pawn. Then I had a drawn king and pawn against rook, messed that up, and lost. So I lost it instead of winning it. And my other one was I had a rook endgame, which was 4-on-4 on the king side and 3-on-0 on the queen side. I had ABC pawns extra. single rook endgame, and I lost that as well. Just, little by little, got myself quote unquote outplayed. Okay, we get this endgame. If black would let the white king over here, then we could find out the answer to my earlier question. Lost with 2 pawns against a